everybody, this is Angela Savage, the daughter of IndyCar driver Swede Savage. It's time to watch stories from motorsports. My buddy, Doug Kenny, loves to share the journey of people in racing, and he is an amazing dude. Drivers, owners, fans, and team members, watch the SFM podcast.
Hey everybody, this is Doug Kenny from Stories from Motorsports. I'd like to thank my buddy Josh Mabe for the YouTube work he did years ago that inspired me to create this platform. I'd like to thank my buddy Victor Sifton for convincing me to get back into it after my hiatus from 2017 to 2019. I have a very special treat for you all today with an amazing journey from an amazing racing figure. Drivers, start your engines. Yeah, so do you have any other good stories from your time in the sport?
I mean, I could probably go on for hours about good stories, but, just the people. One funny one is, like I said, with Go FAS, we were a very small team. We had 12 full-time employees. So I had many hats. I was PR, marketing. I helped with all the licensing. So when the first NASCAR video came out and you saw all of the Go FAS cars in there, that was all me. I got Go FAS's diecast produced for the first time, all that kind of stuff. Installed the car wraps. And then one of the other jobs I had as the owner, Archie, lived in Maine. And so his son Mason ran the team. And we became best friends. And so there were times where Mason couldn't make some big meetings and stuff like that, and so I would have to act as the GM, and so here I am in these meetings with Hendrick, and that was like, whoa, what am I doing? And I'll never forget being in a meeting with Mason at NASCAR, and them talking about the car of the future, which is now what we're driving, and getting a PowerPoint presentation and printing it out and bringing it back to the shop, and everyone in the shop like, what? And we're like, oh, this will never happen. And lo and behold, here we are with the car tomorrow. Or no, not the car tomorrow, the Gen 6, right?
Yeah.
But that was a good one. Another fun one was when the Cup Series switched over to the digital dash, which is probably 2016. And, at Go FAS, we didn't have any team engineers. And so our crew chief, Wally Rogers, was like, I don't know who I trust with all this. So he goes, Tim, I'll put you in charge of it. I'm like, okay. So I was having to go to all these engineering meetings with McLaren and sitting in rooms with, the 10 engineers from Hendrick, learning how to set the digital dash and how to program it. And I'm just like thinking to myself, I'm supposed to find sponsorship. Now I got to figure out how Bobby Labonte wants his dash to look. And if I mess this up, it's on me. And thinking, if our team ever gets caught speeding on pit road, I'm never going to hear the end of it because I'm the one that has to set those parameters. And it was just it was stressful, but then you go and look back at it and you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. That I got to do all that kind of stuff. And so, but like I said, many interactions with the drivers. I'll never forget Jeff Gordon's last ever race at Homestead, and he was going for the championship, and they put the championship 4 cars in very far back in the field. And at the time, our hauler driver was hurt, so he couldn't run fuel like normal. So, of course, I had to put on a fire suit and run fuel while doing Twitter updates and all that kind of stuff. And so anyway, Jeff Gordon walks past us, and I see him, and I shook his hand and thanked him for everything he did for our sport. And, he saw, thanked me and all that kind of stuff. And then one of my rituals was on Mondays, I would always rewatch the race on TV, because there's so much that happens at a race that you don't even know about because you're there in person, that you learn from TV, right? And so I remember rewatching the pre-race, and lo and behold, the NBC helicopter caught that interaction with me and Jeff Gordon. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. So, little things like that.
Yeah, you don't have to pick sides on this one if you don't wish, but what was your reaction and the team's reaction when you rewatched the Martinsville race in 2015 when what happened?
So if I remember correctly, we had Kyle Fowler driving for us. And we were already out of the race. I think we had a mechanical issue. And I remember helping the team load up the hauler, and we just hear everyone screaming. And so we immediately look up to the Jumbotron, and we're just like, oh, man, that's bad. Because I remember it was like it was yesterday when the first incident happened at Kansas. Because I was running fuel, and I hear caution on the radio, and I look up to the Jumbotron and see, Kenseth getting spun out. And then to see that Martinsville, we were just like, oh, this is cool, crazy, and bad. But I don't blame Joey for what he did. Or no, I'm sorry, not Joey, Matt. I don't blame Matt Kenseth for what he did,
Yeah, I know what you mean. That was a very complicated one because, it was just, the thing about me is I have a bit of morals in me, just based on how I was raised. So I sort of thought that in this situation, even though it's the culture of NASCAR, I thought that both were honestly in the wrong. And I also felt to an extent that it was NASCAR's fault as well, because, in the past, they had a few chances, to react to that, and it wouldn't have gotten to that point where people would question the sport's integrity, you know what I mean? Just my opinion, though.
No, I know, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. But, once again, you're fighting for a championship. You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And that's the playoff format that we're in right now. And that's what it brings it out. And that, you know what? One thing a lot of people don't know, TV is what runs professional sports. And, NBC got their money's worth on that one.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, what was your final race as the PR guy?
Homestead with, was it Jeffrey? I think Jeffrey was driving for us. No. It was a buddy of mine that I know from out here in California that races. Dylan, gosh, I'm trying to play his last name.
Lupton?
Yes, Dylan Lupton, thank you. Yeah, he drove Homestead for us, and that was my last race with Go FAS.
Yeah. Afterwards, when they went with Matt DiBenedetto, were you happy to see, as much as I was, that they were starting to frequently place in the top 10 more, especially at restrictor plates?
Yes, and a lot of that is an attribute to they started to get more resources. I don't know. I remained very good friends with that team. Like, I would still go and wrap the cars for them. But I know that they were, I think they got more sponsorship money in because of that. They were able to get some full-time engineering. They were finally able to go to, the sim, all that kind of stuff. So they were getting a lot more support. And so it was able to help them run better, which, was awesome to see. Because the group of guys over there, I still talk to some of them to this day. We still keep in contact and stuff like that. So it was awesome to see that, especially to see it from Mason and RG, all those guys over there. They definitely deserved it.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to hear, as a wrap-up, my funniest story in racing so far?
Yes, I would love to.
I have two of them, actually. The first one was in 2013 when I went to the Phoenix Cup, one of the Phoenix Cup races. At the time, Front Row Motorsports was starting to improve, but they were still, a start and park team for the most part. And at the time, I just found it a little weird, from my perception, that they called themselves Front Row Motorsports when they usually qualified at the back or finished last every race, it seemed like. So, and at the time, I was a young teen, and so I was somewhat rude back then, like teens can be,
Yeah.
But anyway, I was on the pit road walking and seeing the cars and all that, and I was with my brother and my dad, and my brother asked me, "Who do you think is going to finish last today, Doug?" And I said pretty loudly, "Back Row Motorsports will, along with their cars." And all of a sudden, my dad shushed me, and I was like, "What?" And he pointed behind me. And guess what pit stall I was standing in front of with pit crews around?
Well, it's that time it was what, David Reagan?
It was David Reagan, and they had David Rudiman's crew, David Gilliland's crew nearby, and so,
Yep.
Luckily, they didn't hear me, but still, I learned a lesson that day about not talking about people behind their back.
Yeah. A funny story, speaking of front row motorsports. So at the time, Chris Buescher was in the 34, Love's car, if you remember.
Yep.
So we're at Daytona Media Day, and I'm with Bobby, and Chris Buescher was in our group, so to speak, when we go and do all the photo shoots and all that kind of stuff. And Bobby goes to Chris and goes, "Hey, Chris." Chris goes, "Yeah, what's going on?" He goes, "I love your suit." And Chris is like, "Thanks." And Bobby's like, "No, I love your suit." And Chris is like, "Okay." And he's like, "I love your Love's suit." And then it took Chris like 4 tries to finally get it. And then from there on, every time I saw Chris, it would be like, "Hey, dude, love your suit." Because it said Love's all over it.
I remember. I get the point now.
And then I worked for Front Row Motorsports for a few years, for about a year or so. I think it was 2019 is when I was with them. And it was the same joke. Every time I saw Michael, like, "Hey, Michael, love your hat. Love your shirt." and it became the biggest joke inside the building.
That's awesome. And this is how my story with the front row team pretty much ended. A couple weeks after Phoenix, David Reagan and David Gilliland had their 1-2 finish at Talladega, and my mind was blown. And my brother looked over to me and said, "Didn't you recently call them Back Row Motorsports?" And I was like, "Yeah, you got to eat your words."
Yeah, it was awesome to see Front Row get the wins that they got with McDowell at Indianapolis and Daytona, because, once again, such a hard-working, awesome group of guys over there at Front Row. And Jerry Freeze is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet.
Yeah, I think that win at Talladega was the turning point for them, from going from a start and park or back of the field team to getting better,
Yeah, and when I was there, they started to get a little bit more help from Ford. They were still, when I was there, Mike Kelly was crew chiefing one of the he was, I think, competition director, or crew chief, or he was one of the two. Because Drew Blickensdorfer was crew chief for McDowell at the time at Front Row, but they were getting a lot of help from Stuart Haas and Roush, and that's when they kind of started to turn things around. When I was there, and they had, that's when they had Matt Tift and McDowell, and the third car was David Reagan. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. So my other story I have that's funny from racing, and this was when I started to diverse into those sports cars and IndyCar series and watching a pretty good portion of those races in person and on streaming. But anyway, I was one of the people that was lucky enough to attend the very first street race in Nashville a few years ago for IndyCar and the other series.
Nice.
Yeah, and this is what happened when we first entered the track, me and a friend of mine. We went together. She didn't know anything about racing, and so as we walked through the bridge on day one when we all entered, I was telling her about, the history of IndyCar and the Trans Am Series, Stadium Super Trucks, and all that. And I did not know about GT America yet, so that's when I would learn about that. But anyway, the minute we entered the track, we showed our tickets and went to the bleachers and the fields where they had all the concessions and the stands and all that. We hear loud sounds, which were the Indy cars in practice. What happens within the first 10 minutes of entering the track? I'm talking with my friend and in an empty field, explaining to her about the Unsers and Andretti's and Indianapolis and all that, and I get caught up in the conversation, and the next thing I remember, I'm on the ground after being hit slightly by something that I could tell was a golf cart. and I'm just wondering, okay, who that beep hit me, And then I stand up, and guess who's behind the wheel? Roger Penske.
Oh man, that's funny.
Yeah, you can imagine that my moment of startledness and a little bit of rage quickly ended when I saw Penske,
Like, oh, it's okay. Sorry, I was in your way, Roger.
Penske was polite enough to ask me if I was okay, But the minute I mentioned his name, he had a smile as if to say, I knew I'd get recognized sooner or later.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. I never got a chance to interact with him, but I've heard nothing but the best about him from the employees that work at Penske Racing. And, you know, there's such a thing in Penske. It's called Penske Perfect.
Yep, there's a reason for it.
That's all he wants. Penske Perfect.
Yep, and the thing about him is he wants winners.
Yep.
And champions.
Right now, he's got them driving for him.
Yep, and also, as you can imagine, I'm looking up on my wall right there where I have a signed copy of my picture with him afterwards.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Does it say, sorry, I hit you with the golf cart?
No, it just is simply, to Douglas, all the best.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
But in my moment when I realized... Oh yeah, that's a memory to cherish, and when I had my moment of realizing who it was, I told him, no problem, man, it's an honor.
That's pretty cool, dude. That's pretty cool.
Yep. Pretty soon I'm going to be in my 80s talking with young race fans with a cane and being like, by the way, I ran into Roger Penske ran into me at a young age.
Oh, that's too good.
Yeah. So yeah, where can people find you?
Oh, gosh. I mean, let's see. I'm on social media, but I don't post much. The best is my Instagram. It's pretty much full of just pictures of me and my son, but my Instagram handle is at Barile, BARILE,
Sounds good, man. So yeah, that's all I have for now, but how can your journey impact race fans?
Never give up. Never give up. You know, I grew up starting to work on race cars when I was 14 years old, and never in my wildest dreams did I ever think I'd make it to where I did. So that's the biggest thing I could say is just never give up. If you have a dream, do everything you can to pursue it.
Yep, for sure.
And the sky's the limit.
Yep, the sky's the limit, and this is something you'll probably be able to tell your son since he'll probably get the reference. One thing about race cars is it doesn't matter where they're going. What matters is deciding to hop into it.
Yep, exactly. And if you can afford it.
Yeah, you need a PhD. A papa has dough.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's all I have for now, but I thank you for coming on to SFM.
All right. Thank you, Doug, for having me, and I hope everyone out there has a great one.
Yep. So everybody, I'd like to thank Tim Barile for appearing on SFM, and we'll see you next time on the next episode. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please hit like and subscribe if you did so, and please continue supporting our amazing guest. And everybody, we'll see you next time on SFM.
Hi, this is Ted Warner speaking. While the checkered flag is waved for this program, stay tuned for next week for the next episode of SFM. Thanks to Doug Kenny for what he does for motorsports.